Sup, you beautiful bastards? Hope you're having a fantastic Monday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing I want to talk about today was one of the most requested things for a long time now, and that is the Fyre Festival and the fallout from it. Now, the original Fyre Festival story is one I missed out on my week away from the show, but luckily, the story is so juicy, it keeps getting updates. Now, for those that don't know, Fyre Festival was billed as Coachella on a private island, offering the premium of the premium, supposed to be the cultural experience of the decade. Ticket packages reportedly ranged from $1,500 to $250,000. It was co-created by Ja Rule. It was advertised heavily by a bunch of Instagram models. They were expecting between 6,000 and 7,000 people, and it turned out to be one of the most astonishing failures I have ever seen. The primo accommodations turned out to be, this is amazing, turned out to be the same kind of tents that FEMA uses in a disaster relief situation. Reportedly, there wasn't a single thing in the general store for sale. The concierge booth was half built. Tons of people started freaking out, trying to figure out how the hell they're gonna get back home. A bunch of other people who hadn't gotten to the island yet had gotten stuck in Florida. I could go on for another 10 minutes of how much of a shit show this ended up being, but there's more to get to. Main point, colossal failure, they have to cancel. And so the big question became, why did this happen? Many started shouting that this was a scam, it was a Ponzi scheme of some sort, while others said they were just grossly unprepared. Ja Rule took to Twitter to say, "It is not a scam. As everyone is reporting, I don't know how everything went so left, but I'm working to make it right by making sure everyone is refunded. I truly apologize, as this is not my fault, but I'm taking responsibility. I'm deeply sorry." How would it? I truly apologize. This is not my fault, all caps. But I'm taking responsibility. What? Also, Ja, how is it not your fault if you co-created a festival that was being run by a company you co-own? Because it wasn't just a festival, it is a company called Fyre Media. And the way I came about finding out Fyre Media was a company, it was actually two things. The first being that because of this spectacular failure, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't a scam, it was just a failure. They are the target of a massive class action lawsuit. LA defense attorney Mark Garagos filed a $100 million class action lawsuit. Now keep in mind, that's obviously not the only lawsuit. There are smaller groups of individuals that are suing. Fyre Media is even being sued by the company they hired to provide medical care. Their lawsuit has this lovely line: "When NES arrived on the island, it immediately discovered that the accommodations were uninhabitable, including bug infestation, blood-stained mattresses, and no air conditioning." There's also now the murmurings of what's going to happen with the people that loaned Fyre Media money for this event. We'll have to wait and see as more of that develops. But wait, my friends, there is more. Not only was the event a disaster that screwed over thousands, not even including the Bahamas themselves, not only are they the target of massive lawsuits, they have now been exposed for, oh my god, they're now being exposed as a company that seems to be screwing over their employees. I'll let you be the judge. Vice News came into possession and published audio from a Fyre Media phone call. And what we hear from the audio is it sounds like there are several employees on the line, along with co-founders of Fyre Media, Ja Rule and Billy McFarland. Now, Billy does most of the talking here, and what he tells them is fabulous.
So after conferring with our counsel and all financial people, unfortunately, we are not able to proceed with payroll immediately for the company. I understand that this is not an ideal situation for everybody, and this will likely cause a lot of you to resign, which we totally get and understand. That said, if you want to stick with us, we'd love to have you, and we'll have to work together and get us to hunker down and get back to a place where everything resumes to business as usual.
So what he essentially just said is payroll, the people who make sure you get paid, there's just gonna be none of that. We're not firing you, it's just if you choose to stay on, you won't get paid. I just want you to imagine that. Your boss comes up to you and he's like, Gary, here's the thing, this is hard news. Now don't worry, I'm not firing you, but the part of the business that pays you, they're not going to. Now, if this new set of circumstances, which is you not getting paid for the work you're doing, is not cool with you, you can resign. But just know that if you are willing to do the same job for me, but for free, I'm good with that. And then just hearing the employees' disbelief, it would be hilarious if it wasn't the reaction from people who were just doing their job, but then because of upper management, the failure to actually follow through on this, they're the ones getting screwed. That's what keeps it from being funny to me and just makes it infuriating.
So I'm unclear as to how you're asking us to remain employed while not paying us.
We're not asking anybody to remain employed. We're saying that we can no longer continue the payroll, so understand if that means you're leaving the company. If people want to stay and help out, then we're of course going to do that. And there's nothing that prevents anybody from wanting to stay to help out.
Billy, I understand that, but that's a breach of my contract that I signed with you. So are you firing me?
We're not firing anybody. We're just letting you know that there'd be no payroll in the short term. So there's no more official employment.
So you're not going to lay us off, which would allow us to file for unemployment benefits. You just are not going to pay us anymore and then making us quit ourselves. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Sorry, what was the question?
Question is this. You are not going to lay us off so that we can't, file for unemployment benefits. What you're going to do is just not pay us, forcing us to then quit. Is that kind of what we're saying?
I'm not aware of how this impacts the employment benefits.
And the final bit of fallout I've seen around this story seems to be revolving around the Instagram models. It turns out that a good number of the models promoting Fyre Festival didn't follow FTC guidelines. To oversimplify it, if I am being compensated for a promotion, I need to make it very apparent to you that this is an ad. You need to say sponsor. Certain places you need to put #spawn, #ad. On top of the legal reasons, it just seems kind of scummy. You know that lawyer I was talking about earlier, Garagos? He's talking about suing the models. And what's crazy to me is a lot of the models haven't even deleted their past pictures promoting the event. You look at the caption, there's no mention that it's an ad. The lawyers start getting thirsty. Although I think that if the lawyers go after anyone, they're gonna go after the Kendall Jenner types. There were reports that Kendall Jenner was paid $250,000 to promote to Fyre Festival on Instagram. The post has since been deleted, but there are reports that this was not labeled an advertisement. And so right now it looks like that's what the lawyers are gonna do. They're gonna try and find screenshots of the posts that are now deleted, see if they were labeled as advertisements. Of the big models promoting to the event, the only one I saw have #ad was Emily Ratajkowski. And we're just gonna have to kind of wait to see what happens, but I feel like we can get some lessons out of this. One, let this be a lesson out there for anyone that wants to jump into business. Do not spend all of your money and time on the marketing of an idea, all of the front fluffy bullshit, if you can't actually execute on your product. All you're guaranteeing is the largest audience possible to witness your colossal failure. And the second is just like we always recommend with a news story where you're skeptical of it. If someone is promoting something, whether it be an Instagram famous person or even my stupid ass face, be a little skeptical of why. Now, for a lot of you, you have a relationship with me and my show for years, and so there is a built-in trust there. I'm just saying, be a little bit skeptical if the person promoting to an event that's gonna cost you thousands of dollars and they're saying that's gonna be awesome. Be a little bit skeptical if that's the same person that's telling you to drink skinny tea or any of that other stupid Instagram bullshit. I'm just saying. And actually, I'm gonna pass that question off to you. When do you trust what's being put in front of you? I mean, obviously the advertising must work because a lot of these people who promote somewhat sketchy products, they keep getting those deals. And those companies giving those deals seem to stay in business. When it comes to sponsorships, what makes you trust some and not others? That is, if you trust anyone at all. But from there, I want to share some stuff I love today in Awesome. And the first bit of awesome is we got a trailer for the new Marvel series called The Gifted, and it is fantastic if you excuse the fact that some parts of it seem oddly familiar to season 1 of Heroes. Like literally the blonde cheerleading looking girl, her dad is the one that tries to capture Mute. Really? Whatever. Side note, I like to imagine that there's an alternate timeline where the writer's strike never happened and Heroes continued being a good series. There was so much potential. Then we got a trailer for the new Netflix series Glow, which stars Alison Brie. And as far as unique plots go, it checks off the box. 1980s businesswoman decides to join a women's professional wrestling circuit. Also, we get Mark Maron, and I think that's a good thing. Then I just have to share this amazing drone footage of Apple Park being created. Apple Park is this insane futuristic looking facility. It's going to be Apple's new headquarters. To me, it's just amazing seeing that being made. Then we had a bunch of creators from the high quality GIF subreddit doing their thing, which actually is not specific. One of the things that they do is they high quality GIFify certain music videos. This time they did it with Eminem's music video for Rap God. And it was just a beautiful melding of two things I love. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then let's talk about the WannaCry/WannaCrypt ransomware. If you haven't heard yet, this was first noticed Friday. There is ransomware that has affected now over 200,000 computers, has spread to over 150 countries that have been locking owners out of their computers until they paid Bitcoin. There are reports that the ransomware demanded between $300 and $600 worth of Bitcoin. And this didn't just affect everyday people. The people that were hit the hardest seemed to be the National Health Service, the NHS in England and Scotland. In Russia, there were reports that domestic banks, the Interior Ministry, they were hit as well. Now, what makes this story enraging for many is that WannaCry reportedly uses a vulnerability in old versions of Windows that was originally discovered and exploited by the United States National Security Agency as an offensive cyber weapon. And reportedly, the NSA tools that exploited this weakness were stolen by hackers. Originally, it looked like they were going to auction it off, and then they just gave it away. And so we have a lot of people saying this is why we were scared about the Vault 7 leaks. If you don't know what the Vault 7 leaks are, I'll link to it down below. I did a whole video on it. But one of the big things is they would find an exploit in a product and then just stockpile it, use it as a weapon. Obviously, there is a difference between the CIA and the NSA, but it's the same kind of idea. This is something something Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, really hammered home on Sunday. He issued a statement saying, "This attack provides yet another example of why the stockpiling of vulnerabilities by governments is such a problem. We have seen vulnerabilities stored by the CIA show up on WikiLeaks, and now this vulnerability stolen from the NSA has affected customers around the world. Repeatedly, exploits in the hands of governments have leaked into the public domain and have caused widespread damage." Adding, "The governments of the world should treat this attack as a wake-up call. They need to take a different approach and adhere in cyberspace to the same rules applied to weapons in the physical world. We need governments to consider the damage to civilians that comes from hoarding these vulnerabilities and the use of these exploits. This is one reason we called in February for a new Digital Geneva Convention to govern these issues, including a new requirement for governments to report vulnerabilities to vendors rather than stockpile, sell, or exploit them." And I 100% agree with that statement, and not to take away from it, I think we also need to talk about personal and organizational responsibility. Reportedly, WannaCry exploits a vulnerability in old versions of Windows. So there's the core basic advice that if you have an operating system, you should update it to the one that's still supported by the company that put out that operating system. But on top of updating the operating system, you should also make sure that you are downloading and installing patches. Microsoft earlier this year released a patch that protects against this specific vulnerability, but so many organizations didn't make sure to patch their computers. Also, I have to give a little tip of my hat over to Microsoft, who are reportedly assisting customers even though these operating systems are no longer supported. And then, of course, the final basic advice is if you get an email and you're like, what is this attachment? Probably don't open that attachment. But a big thing I want to note is I say all of this noting that still there are going to be ways that you end up getting hacked. I feel like it's less of a situation of if you are going to be affected, but just when. But if you can, at least take the steps to make it harder, or so that you are affected a smaller amount of times. But where I do want to end this story, and it's on kind of a positive note, even though we may see a resurgence of a problem, I have to give props to a user by the name of MalwareTech. To oversimplify it, he took a sample of the malware, found that it was connecting to a certain domain that turned out was not registered. He then registered that domain and effectively created a sinkhole that was capturing all the malicious traffic, thus preventing control of the infected computers by the person that put this out there. And I really wanted to give this guy props, not only because he did it, but because it looked like a lot of media was covering him in a not as gracious way, and also because at least one outlet decided to dox this guy. He wanted to remain anonymous, but a certain tabloid that I will not name dug through everything he's done and found out who he was. Seems like a pretty shitty way to thank a guy who protected a ton of people. But that's where I'm going to end that story. If you want a better understanding of the whole situation, I'll link to MalwareTech's blog on this. He obviously explains it much better. Yeah, that's where I'm going to end today's show. And remember, if you liked this video, you like what I do on this channel, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Also, if you missed the last Philip DeFranco show you want to watch, click or tap right there. If you want to see today's brand new behind the scenes vlog, click or tap right there. But that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.